The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
This is the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun on AM 950. Tonight we're going to play parts of interviews from 3 different guests. We've had some amazing people appear on the show, and we think that they should be heard from again. Enjoy the show. We are talking with Mr. Anthony F. Sanchez. We are talking about the book UFO Nexus, A Journey into Alien Realms and Cosmic Secrets. Man, this is quite the book. I mean, this is quite the conversation, too. One that has to be talked about, isn't it? And Anthony, one thing that I had noted is that I had a couple questions come through. Joanne had said when we're talking about more attention being put onto this, she's asking, is it the government or is that we are paying more attention as citizens?
I would have to say that it's both. Because you do have a lot of Congress men and women who are concerned with the voices of their constituents. And the constituents are saying, hey, we're the taxpayers. We're paying all this money to ATIP and to Arrow and all these other groups that have existed, these organizations. What are you doing? Why are you studying UAPs? Is there something we need to be worried about? You know, there is a retired CIA agent by the name of John Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is interesting. And people used to say he was kooky, but I don't think so. He has come out and said that by 2027, aliens are going to reveal themselves through the government or through the military or a combination of both. He says that we are standing on the cusp of what could be the most significant event in human history. Now, Carl Nell recently at the Seoul Symposium, was saying that we're in a race to avoid a catastrophic leak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to lose to our adversaries with regards to UAP technology. So you have Carl Nell saying that by 2030, we need to have everything done. Excuse me, sorry, my voice. Then you have John Ramirez who's saying that by 2027, aliens are going to make themselves known to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least to the government and the military.
Right.
A lot of people are arguing that aliens have already made themselves known. You know, I spoke to a gentleman back in 2010 for my first book, UFO Highway, who said that there were gray aliens working alongside the military and scientists from Los Alamos National Laboratories in Dulce, New Mexico. So, I mean, that's a very famous story.
Yeah.
But if we've already had established contact with gray aliens, who is it that's going to be making themselves appear or apparent in 2027? You know, is it someone else? I mean, Linda Moulton Howe talks about the tall whites, also talks about the grays. You know, we have people throughout history talked about the Anunnaki.
Yep.
Many people believe that the Anunnaki are the progenitors who Colonel X back in 2010 said was the creator of the Greys, who, you know, now reside in Dulce, New Mexico. By the way, there's apparently supposed to be gray aliens that also live at Pine Gap in Australia, their underground facility. And so, I mean, who is it that's going to appear in 2027?
Well, and so, first of all, once again, folks, we're talking with Anthony Sanchez. The book that we are talking about tonight. Well, we're actually kind of going a little bit off topic there a little bit, but it's UFO Nexus: A Journey into Alien Realms and Cosmic Secrets, available at UFOcurrents.com. .com, and also if you get the book between now and the end of the year, as a special thank you for being a listener to GhostBox Radio, Anthony's going to include 2 unique bookmarks. If you have any questions, put it into the comments, or if you have questions, you can call in 952-946-6205. That's 952-946-6205. Anthony, my question to you, though, after you said all that is, what do you think it is? What do you think? Do you think it's Greys? Do you think, and to your point, I mean, I'm sure you have some kind of theory. If we are working along with these Greys, aliens, whatever, whichever variety they are, and that there should be that they're going to let themselves be known to us by 2027. What's your theory on what's going to happen or who they are?
Well, for one, I do believe that the Greys exist.
Yeah.
I've had my own personal experience with UFOs and Greys all since my childhood. But based on the people that I've interviewed since 2009, I mean, that's a lot of time, and I've talked to a lot of people over the years. I'm talking about military personnel, first responders, medical people that work in the medical field, doctors. There are too many times that I've interviewed people that have independently told me things about the Greys that they've encountered, where the similarities are just too close to be a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's through my lab, which is a military abduction scenario, or a traditional UFO abduction that has nothing to do with the military, I think that what we're seeing is lots of evidence of the Greys. I think that's who we're going to be encountering in the future. And the very prospect of an alien revelation happening in 2027, you got to remember, things like that were once considered mere conjecture. But now that has gained credence, especially with this leak of the disclosure plan that happened at the Soul Symposium. There was a PowerPoint presentation. And on the presentation was a plan that outlined concepts, and I swear to you, they used terminology, such as a hierarchy of beings. And if you're a fan of Star Trek, they even mentioned something called the Prime Directive.
Oh, yeah.
So alongside a lot of the concerns about geopolitical implications of countries like Russia and China, is that they may potentially acquire extraterrestrial technology. So when Colonel Nell says we're in a race to acquire UAP technology that, may appear or safeguard that which what we already have, he's talking about a significant threat to national security. All of this has to do with national security.
Right. And so a comment came through, and I'm trying to frame this up actually, because I understand what Chuck is saying here, but I also feel like that it can work the other way as well. And what Chuck says here is pre-internet accounts that match, like story-wise, that people. My understanding from that is that people who don't have access to see anything, that interests him more than current accounts, but. I think we're talking about what you're dealing with is something very different than just finding information on the internet.
Right. We can go all the way back to 1985 when Whitley Strieber wrote his book Communion, which was the first book that had literally the cover was a picture of a gray face, a gray alien, and it freaked a lot of people out. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, since then there's been a lot of stories about grays." No. Prior to 1985, there were tons of stories, firsthand accounts, witnesses, people who have been abducted and experimented on by gray aliens. And Whitley Strieber's book was just a catalyst to it finally becoming something that people were willing to speak about, including myself, by the way.
Yeah. Kind of made it, I don't know if acceptable is the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, it gives you the okay. You're
talking with somebody who underwent therapy from the time they were a child for claiming they saw UFOs and aliens. I literally had experiences, which I wrote about in the book, by the way. My personal experiences chapter 22, I believe. My UFO UAP experiences. My mom actually put me in therapy as a little kid because she didn't want me telling people that I saw UFOs, let alone that I saw a creature.
Right.
So I'm highly educated. I've been working in the semiconductor industry for over 20 years as a software engineer. I've consulted for the state of California. I've done work with Johns Hopkins University, APL, the FBI. I've done a lot of stuff. I'm not crazy.
No.
A lot of people say I'm jeopardizing my reputation and my career by talking about this. And perhaps I was, Greg. But that was 10 years ago. A lot of people were concerned for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 2023. We just had congressional subcommittee hearings with a counterintelligence officer, David Grush, a famed pilot, David Fravor,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ryan Graves, and then not to mention Kevin Day, a radar specialist. All the things that they're talking about, these UFOs that they're encountering, these UAPs. I'm old school. I call them UFOs.
I do too. I don't like UAP, quite honestly.
Right. A lot of people don't realize it, but the term UAPs has been around since the 1960s. But it's just now that the government has been adopting UAPs as a means to kind of pull away from the media circus that tends to surround the term UFO. But my point is that this is such a pivotal time in history, and I think it's just undeniable. And I no longer am ashamed to admit that I've seen UFOs or that I've seen creatures. I had my own personal experiences. I was put into therapy. My therapist said, no, he's not crazy. He's a smart kid. But he says he saw what he saw.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to lie.
I find it interesting, Adam. You'll remember we had John Yost on back in April.
Yeah, for the Alien special.
Exactly, and John told the same exact thing, Anthony. Of his parents put him into into therapy because they didn't like the fact that he was seeing something, and they didn't like what it was. And my question to you about that is, I mean, how did that set? I mean, how far did that set you back, just as a person? I mean,
not really. I mean, it didn't set me back as a person. All I could do was tell the truth to my therapist.
Yeah.
He wanted to know. I remember him to this day. His name was Dr. Jerry Agusa. He was a really brilliant man. And he asked me tons of questions, put me on the spot. And it wasn't interrogation. It was therapy. But, ultimately, I think he had to admit, this is what Anthony says he saw.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with him. He's still a normal kid. He wants to go to school, play baseball. And, apart from the fact that I've had these experiences, there's nothing abnormal about my life.
No. And I'm getting people in the comments who are just, this is what's been going on. Feels like therapy for a lot of people, like or a relief that they were able, like Julia's, like everyone who is called crazy aren't crazy anymore. It's like
Right.
there is a sort of a release of that, and that is good to see. It's just unfortunate that it taken so much time. But say 2027 comes around,
Right?
I mean, it will come around. I don't mean to make it sound like it won't, but 2027 comes around, we get these aliens that revealed themselves to us. Do you think we as the human race are ready for that?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Since the 1950s, the entire planet, at least the westernized world that's had access to movies and television, we've been conditioned through media, through early shows like The Twilight Zone, then Star Trek, then Star Wars, then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Aliens, Predators. Every show, every blockbuster, even the Marvel franchise has conditioned the populace, the global populace, for the moments that when aliens do reveal themselves, yes, it's going to be groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be terrifying. I think people will be accustomed to the idea and prepared to accept it. Whereas in the early days, in the 50s and the 60s, perhaps the 70s, they weren't ready.
It makes me think of that program Alien Nation. Like they,
right?
And if they start living amongst us, and then they're being they're being they're basically racially profiled. You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook. Look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. And finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
We are talking about bridging the gap between the paranormal and metaphysical, and I have with me tonight the very wonderful Char Savoie, who is the owner of Charvinity, as well as the owner for Metamorphosis Connections. And we're going to be talking about those two companies here in the program. One of the things I want to do, Char, if that works for you, is I'm going to go through some of these comments in the comment section,
Sure.
because I think it's really interesting. Now, folks, if you're listening on the radio, know that we do a live video stream on both AM 950 Radio as well as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, both on Facebook. And so we have folks watching those streams, and they're putting comments in. And know that a lot of the people who are watching, who are commenting, are people who are in our field, who do all these types of work. So, and one of the first things that I see is Joshua has left a lot of comments in here. And I think, Joshua clearly has experienced a lot of what we're talking about. And I also think, and Joshua, I don't mean to make guesswork, but I have a feeling it's outside of the paranormal as well, trying to feel, connected, trying to feel accepted. And that's a whole other different can of worms, isn't it, Char?
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough little world to live in sometimes.
Especially when you know what you know what you feel.
Right.
And I mean, and once again, I'm not saying in the paranormal field. I'm saying just in life, trying to where people are looking at what you're doing, and they think, and I don't think I'm too far from even saying it, even jokingly, like it's witchcraft. It's like bad, but bad witchcraft. We just had a spot for Witch Jody. She's a good witch. She's a white witch.
Right.
But people still look at it as like, what are you picking up? What do you mean? It's just I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I get some weird looks, especially when I meet somebody for the first time, like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, Right. It's like I'm afraid to say it sometimes. I'm like, okay, well, here we go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Going through some of the comments here, let's see here. A lot of Joshua, which Joshua, keep them coming. That's totally good. I mean, especially if you're if you're feeling good about putting that out there, because sometimes just even writing it out and having people, understand, like Joshua says, one of them, my spirit work shouldn't be diminished because I received the information differently. I mean, right, Char?
Absolutely, 100%. And I always want to say, no matter where I am, it's a safe space to be able to talk about that. So
yeah.
Please, anybody else that wants to mention anything, you're safe with me to say it.
Yeah, well, and this show is always a safe. I mean, we are not going to, in the show in general, we just can't. We're not going to knock anybody because we're talking about stuff that people are just, that it's uncomfortable for some people. I mean, we're on a political station here, but we're not talking about politics. We're talking about stuff that people that they come to terms with death. They come to terms
Right.
with what happens after that, and that's not a subject a lot of people are totally interested in, even with the breakthroughs we've had over the years.
Right, absolutely. I mean, oddly enough, I've been extremely terrified of death my whole entire life, and I'm a medium, so explain that one. But
Right.
it's a weird place. Everybody's in a weird place with different things, and it's hard to kind of live that authentic yourself when you have gifts and intuitive things happening, or even just to say you're into the paranormal
Yeah.
in general. So it is kind of an awkward little thing to just shout it out to the world.
I firmly believe that I lost my last job because the overall boss did not like the idea of the paranormal in general.
I've had similar things happen as well.
Yep, and that's just but I am not going to not mention it. I'm not going to hide that fact. That's who I am. This is
Right.
what I'm about. And if people don't, well, first of all, I can't hide the fact. I'm doing a radio show 5 nights a week, broadcasting
Right.
to 100,000 people in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So it's kind of hard to hide that.
A little bit.
Unless
You just need the billboards now.
that, or do I just go under a different name? Like I'm Starseed. Listen to Starseed every night. I didn't do the whole name.
Nope. I'm not even gonna say a comment on that one.
Starseed at 10.
Right.
Leanne says, bring the right energy together, you'll get results.
Absolutely.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Leanne also says, it's always uncomfortable being vulnerable. Joshua agrees it's uncomfortable, and that's kind of, it's a hard call, isn't it? In terms of how much do you put yourself out there, but also at the same time, Char, wouldn't you also agree that maybe, you got, if you want people to know about it, you kind of have to wear the badge of honor, the ribbon, regardless of, that it's not always going to be as receptive as we would like it to be.
Absolutely. You just have to do it. Be yourself. And I guess with anything else, I mean, you have to feel out where you're at, who you're with, and what's going on. Sometimes there's just, in life, there's certain people that you just don't have certain conversations with, and then you just pick and choose who you can have those conversations with, and it'd be nice if you could say it to anybody, but I think if you can just have that support system of the people that really truly honor you for who you are, that makes a world of difference.
I remember one of my first interviews that I did, and I don't even know how I got into this, because it was I think it was like on Craigslist, and someone in town here is doing a podcast, and they're like, we're looking for interesting people to interview. And so this was so many years ago. And I sent them a note. I'm like, I'm a paranormal investigator. If you want to talk to somebody like that, then I can do this. And they're like, sure. And we get on the program. And like I said, from the start, I'm all about, including everybody. And we start talking. We're talking about investigations and stuff. And he then says, what I can't stand? I said, what's that? He goes, psychic mediums. I'm like, oh my God. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, none of that is possibly real. They can't tell me, and it's one of those stupid things that people say who don't believe at all, where they're like, well, they got, like, the ones who get in a car accident, they didn't know that was coming, that sort of stupidness. I don't mind people not believing, but when you're rude about it and when you clearly don't understand it, that's a completely ball whack. And I'm just sitting there mortified, like I don't even know what to say anymore, And then he's like,
yeah.
Don't you think that that's fake? And I'm like, I don't actually. It was very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception on what people think psychic is. I mean, it's not, we don't walk around knowing the answers to the universe. I mean, if that was the case, we'd all be like somewhere else,
Yeah.
but I mean, we don't tap in 24/7. We do it with intention, and we read energy. We read the current energy of a person or a situation or a place, and that energy can shift. Like, you could come in for a reading with me, and I could tell you what's going on, and I could give you my interpretation of that energy. And when you walk out of my office, you can go right or you can go left, and which way you go can totally change the trajectory of what I just saw. So anytime anybody gets a reading from a psychic medium or anything, know that you have the ability to shift and change that at any point in time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I just don't even know what to say about those other people. And that's the thing too, is that you don't you don't know everything. Like when you don't read your close friends and stuff, because you get too
Right.
close. And I think, wouldn't you say that, universe, spirit, they don't they don't want us to know everything anyway, that there are
I don't
blocks.
want to know anything. I don't want to know everything.
Yeah.
I know too much already. Just in
Right.
general, being a
Yeah.
human, I
Yeah.
don't need to know more than I know. And I get that there's a part of people that don't get it, don't understand it, and there's people that are afraid of it, just like the paranormal. I get that. There's a classic Facebook post that I put out like 2 years before I got into the paranormal. It's like, I've never had a psychic tell me something that was meaningful. I'm not sure. I'm not. It's like, I don't. Not that I don't believe they're there, but I'm really skeptical or something. And then, literally within a couple of years, here I am working at a haunted location, and everything cracks wide open. It was like the universe said, "Oh, here, hold my beer.
Yeah. We'll
Let's show
show
her."
you. Yeah, we'll show you.
Right. And I laugh every time that comes up. I'm like, yeah. I was just terrified of it. I was nervous of it because I didn't understand it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and my favorite, and I've seen it a couple times at these fairs and stuff, and someone will sit down at a medium's table and they'd be like, when am I going to die? And if it were
Oh,
me, I would have been like, well, what time is it now? I mean, just kind of like, let's see, I hope you don't have any plans tonight. Let's put it that way. Just like really,
right.
really mess with. It's just, I think, is one of the worst questions ever. I think that's the worst question for a psychic medium, and I think the worst question you can ask on a paranormal investigation. And Char, you know what I'm going to say is,
Do you want us to
do
leave?
you want us to leave? The first question
Hmm.
out of the gate after you spend hours setting up, like, would you like us to leave? Yes. Oh, well, okay. Let's pack it up.
Right. Yeah. No, those are not great questions.
What do you do when someone asks that?
I just tell them that I don't go down that road. I will not tell anybody that information, nor do I have the ability to figure it out. I
Yeah.
don't want to figure it out.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's it's a shame, and I think that to kind of get a little bit more back on our track about bridging the gap as well, that it just takes a little bit more understanding from either side, because like you said at
Hmm.
the top of the program, it's the same.
Yeah,
There's no
it is.
difference.
No, there isn't. I don't do anything. When you come to my office for a mediumship reading and I connect with grandma or somebody else, I'm doing it by just sitting with you. When I go to a location, I do the exact same thing. I don't do anything different. I don't dress different. I mean, I'm just the same person doing the same thing, tapping in the same way. It just, there's nothing different. A spirit is a spirit.
Well, you do have the medium crown.
Oh,
I
my,
mean,
yeah, my little turban and
yeah,
my
your
cape and
turban, your crystal
my
ball,
S for super psychic. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
and
I'm just kidding.
and it's the same for me when I was doing the Facebook lives. I mean, how I reach out to spirit and helping people reach out to their grandma is no different
Right.
than me going to a location or going to Velisca and seeing if we can get any communication from there. So
Well, there you just bring extra pants.
yeah, right. or at least the right color ones, so they don't stand out.
Right.
So, yeah. So, as we're moving on here, one of the things that we do as well, because we get a lot of people who want to understand what we're talking about a little bit better, but they're also, you get it, I get it quite a bit of people like who they find out what we do. And what the first thing that they always say is, how can I do this? How can I get it? I'd like to do this too. I don't even know what to do. Char and I have been for over 2 years now, have been doing classes where it's where we do just that.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, sharing all that information with people. And I love to teach. I mean, it's just something I love to do. And so it's one of those things where we thought, let's share this information with other people. And we kind of sat down and thought about all of the things we've learned over the several years that we've been doing this, which I think we've added up. It's almost 30 years between the both of us.
Yeah.
And how we've evolved from when we started to where we are now, as far as equipment, as far as our intuition, our tapping in, all of those things. When I started, nobody ever told me to ground myself or clear myself. I didn't know what sage was. I didn't know what any of that stuff was, and so we took all this information, everything we wish we would have known, everything that we have learned, added some stuff into it, and we teach this whole series of classes to show you exactly what it is like to do an investigation.
You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
We have on as our guest tonight, we have Mr. Ernie Pack from Pac-Man Paranormal, Fort Duffield in West Point, Kentucky, which is truly an amazing place. And what we found out just by being there is a location for such creatures as we are talking about tonight. And Ernie, I struggle all the time to wonder what I call them, because I just said creatures, but I don't know if that's the right thing. Do we just call them entities? Do we call them beings? What are your thoughts?
I see we've got in the comments over there the one and only Squatch Man himself, Greg Yost. He calls them the forest people, and I try to stick with that myself. Just to be able to communicate with people who don't necessarily understand that, I will call them a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch from time to time. Yeah. I call them beings, though, more than
beings.
When I'm just generalizing, I'll call them a being.
No, and I think that's a great way of doing it. A couple comments that we have currently. Linda says that it could be these multidimensional beings are here to be enticing for investigators to search for something to talk about. They're here to actually open up conversation. It sounds like, to break the ice about inner dimensions. That's an interesting point. Is it some kind of test? Because not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone wants to. Even within the people who believe such beings exist, they're not necessarily doing, like, they don't all believe the way that we believe.
Right. And, people in our field have been talking for the past 4 or 5 years about how the veil seems to be getting thinner and thinner and thinner all the time between our world and the spirit world, or the energy world, if you will. And it seems like, the government is piecemealing us little pieces of information here and there to try to make people more desensitized to the thoughts of UFOs, for example. I think I think everything is coming to some type of giant disclosure eventually that we are getting closer and closer to all the time. And what Linda's saying might be just a little piece of that, what we're talking about here.
No, that makes sense, and it's certainly, um, it's like just because something exists doesn't mean that we have to know about it, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and maybe there's something to be said that you have to earn the right to be able to, it's like anything really. It's like, if there's a bike gang or something, maybe you have to prove yourself to be, hang out with us,
Right.
sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Now, Denise, who you may know, she says that Squatchman, who apparently is watching, or at least stopped in for a second, Mr. Greg Yost. Squatchman thinks that they're godly people, and we've never felt threatened around them. And I think that's a really important part. I think both those points seem to be very, very accurate from my limited experience with what we've been doing with this.
Yeah, I agree. I'll tell you, the first time I had a up close, I guess, encounter was about 3 years ago, maybe 4 now.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a place they call Gates of Hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's Casey Cemetery, and we were doing a live stream. And Squatchman was going to be there. He hadn't gotten there yet. It was Denise, myself, and another gentleman. And we were standing there by our van, and we heard something huge coming up through the woods. And it was very close to us, and it was very big, and it was moving very fast. And I did get scared and felt threatened at that moment. I'll say it.
Yeah.
And of course, Denise ran straight toward it. But since talking with, I had not met Squatchman before that. Okay.
Yep.
Met him the next day. He started explaining his philosophies and his interactions with them. And since then, we've had several encounters, and I've not felt threatened at all. And like that night that we talked about where I got jolted or whatever you want to call it, I felt like that was a gift, and I felt blessed to get it. It's weird. I know it sounds crazy to people who've never experienced anything like that, or think of them as an animal, but it was totally not like that at all.
And I mean, where would that have come from anyway?
Right.
And it's not like you had something and that was it, or I had something and that was it. We both had an experience, and then other experiences were happening outside of you and I at that time, like with Char and Kim seeing individuals down far away walking, and they're thinking that they're actually campers, and they're not. I mean, there's just, and then let alone, as we kind of alluded to a little bit, the elementals, and that I don't think that could be glossed over, because that's a very important part of it. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like once you, I don't know, open up to this mindset, and your energy kind of matches what it needs to match, you experience everything. I never would have thought I would be sitting on a radio show saying I've seen fairies.
Yeah.
Because I never believed in fairies. But we saw fairies that night that all of that happened. They're in the forest. And, Brad Webb mentioned it over in the comments. We've all seen it.
Yeah.
And it's all about energy. I mean, that's why I totally believe that they are either transdimensional, interdimensional, extra dimensional, whatever, or there's simply an energy being just like a spirit that happens to be able to take the form of what we call a Bigfoot.
Absolutely. And that interaction you had at the Gates of Hell, before that happened, did you see Squatch as like a energy being, or did you
No.
see it more as like Robert would see it as an animal or something?
I was a believer in all of the things that you see Dr. Meldrum talk about. Most of the big researchers in the field, they talk about an undiscovered primate. They call it the missing link.
Yep.
The word Sasquatch itself comes from southwestern part of British Columbia. It's Sasquatch, and it means hairy man, tall hairy man. And I thought of it as something along those lines. And then I guess the first thing that kind of changed my opinion was Denise had seen there at the gates of hell, and she just stopped and turned around and she described to me what she saw. She said, I just saw, and this is going to sound crazy, but you know how Predator looked when he was running through the woods, when you couldn't really see him, but it was just like pixels moving, or like a mirrored image of something moving through there? She said, I just saw that. And I was like, okay, you're crazy, but sure. And then 5 minutes later, I saw the same thing. And then when Squatch Man got down there, we told him about it, and he said, yeah, you saw one cloaking.
Yeah.
And when they cloak, that's how they look.
I think let's blow people's minds here real fast, because I think that people might be understanding, and I don't mean everybody, I don't mean to lump everyone in, but there's people who will be like, I'm on the bandwagon of them being energy creatures. But so Char puts up this comment, and she says that she believes that this is why she had her second experience, because of the energy connection. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that the second encounter, because we were all together for what we'll call our first encounter. You've had other encounters, but as a group, our first encounter, she had this encounter outside of Mankato, Minnesota. And what it kind of blows people's minds that you have talked about, Greg Yost has talked about, is that if she saw another Sasquatch outside of Mankato, Minnesota, it's not impossible to believe that it is the same Squatch that she experienced at Fort Duffield in West Point, Kentucky.
Right. Can
you elaborate on that? Because I don't know if people, I think that might be, because it's not like they get on a train and come up to Mankato.
Right.
It's all part of the transdimensional side of it.
And the energy side of it.
Yes.
You hear people talk about spirit attachments all the time. How a spirit will follow a person from a place to place, from place to place. I firmly believe that these forest people have that very same, very, very same ability to attach to a person. If you bring an energy that they are attracted to, they're going to be with you, and they will opt to show themselves in multiple places. Greg Yost has talked about traveling to the Pacific Northwest to do some Bigfooting. He's got a forest person that he's very close to in his forest up there in southern Indiana that he calls Big Red. And he encountered Big Red out, I believe it was in Montana or something. And,
right. Yes.
It's hard to imagine, but
now,
I don't doubt it a bit.
Now, what Char didn't tell us about is that she had another encounter with a creature I'm not familiar with, and that is Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. I mean, I that was a new one on me. But I'm looking forward to finding out more about Bigfoot, and we'll have an episode about Bigfoot. Folks, I'm just giving you all a hard time. She misspelled Bigfoot and put a U instead of an I, so it's now Bigfoot.
Right.
I don't know why it's so funny to me, but it is. But she redeems herself with that she says, I believe that it's true that it's the same Squatch. The energy was familiar, and this is coming from someone who reads energy for a living. This is what they do. This is their gifts, just like the spirits are familiar, and you know who is there by their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the thing too, is that that as we talked about on here, you and I talked about, Char and I talked about. In fact, I believe it was actually said tonight at Ghost Stories and Beyond by Tom Maurer. Everything, the way that we go about reaching out to these beings, spirits, aliens, it's all the same because it's all energy.
Absolutely.
And Tom said tonight, because he said people always wonder, how do they get a chance to see a spaceship or be, have some sort of alien interaction? And Tom would say to them, well, have you asked for it? And that is exactly what we do, isn't it?
Exactly. Squatch Man, the most epic encounter that I touched on earlier that I can imagine, Denise, myself, our daughter Cora was there with Squatch Man, and he walked out to the forest, raised his hands, and said, "My friends, this might be my last night here. I'm moving. I would love it if you could do something epic for me tonight.
Yeah.
Could you put on a show?" And within about 15 seconds, 7 trees fell in that forest all around us. And they were huge trees.
Mm-hmm.
There was no wind, no rain, no nothing, no reason for this other than he had asked for it and they did it.
Yeah. Well,
and, like you said, you just ask for it.
And trees don't fall. 7 trees do not fall coincidentally.
Right. And they were all a safe distance away from us, and they were all around us. I mean, in a complete circle around us.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. It was pretty freaking awesome.
You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.